and welcome back to My Brain is a Wonderland, the podcast for neurodivergent women and the people who love them. You're here with your host, Emily, and today is the fourth and final episode of the little series I've been doing about the female autistic traits outlined in the book Unmasking Autism by Dr. Devon Price. In the book Unmasking Autism, Dr. Price divides all of the autistic female traits that they have identified or aggregated. I'm not really sure if they identified them or kind of gathered them together, and put them into four separate sections, four separate, words are failing me, topics, I guess. The first episode was emotional autistic traits. The second was psychological. Last week's episode was behavioral. And today I'm going to go over the social female autistic traits. And I just want to preface this episode, like I do all the others, I have not read this book, though I've heard great things about it. I actually found the list of the autistic traits divided into their four subsections on Reddit, where people had been posting about it and kind of discussing if they thought that they fit into any of the traits or not. And if you've listened to the other episodes, I think I can say now that I probably fit into most, if not all of these traits in one way or another. And I think this is a great way to learn more about yourself, reflect on who you are and how you react to things, and also feel less alone. That's partly why I started this podcast, and I definitely feel less alone talking about this with you guys, so I hope you do too. So the first one is a social chameleon, adopts the mannerisms and interests of the groups they're in. Abso-freaking-lutely. I do it with almost everything that I do. I'm a very self-aware, independent person who puts down a lot of boundaries, but in a social situation, it doesn't mean I can be peer pressured, but in a social situation, I will kind of go with the flow. If you've listened to my second episode ever, it talks about how I speak, how I talk. I'm English, I live in America, I'm autistic, so my accent, to be quite frank, has gone absolutely doolally. And I often take on the speech patterns and the accent of someone that I'm around or talking to. You may have heard me say dude a lot. That is actually from a singular friend that became my best friend, who I worked with at Blockbuster Video from 2004 to 2005 for just over a year. And he would say dude all the time. And now, 15, 16, 17 years later, I still use that all the time. Sometimes it'll come and go with those kinds of things, but I tend to do that especially with the way that I talk. Mannerisms as well. If you are using a certain hand gesture, moving a certain way, I will generally adopt that while I'm talking to you. And actually, as a professional dancer in my past, it was actually really beneficial for me, because I've called myself a copycat in past episodes. I could watch someone physically do something, and I could emulate it to perfection immediately, which would shock people. It would shock my boss, people I worked with, that I could see someone, let's say I'm a bronze level dancer, and I see someone do an advanced gold move. I could usually completely emulate that move perfectly just by watching the person do it, or dancing with them and reflecting what they're doing. And it's something I've always done. It's something I don't always like that I do, because I will actually, in some social groups, especially at work, will unconsciously dampen down who I really am. So if someone is talking about Taylor Swift, maybe, I'm just picking it as an example because she's blown up like crazy since COVID. If they're talking about how much they love her, I might say, oh, I'm not, but because I don't listen to her at all. Shake it off. That's all I could tell you about Taylor Swift, to be honest. Other than all of the silly hype around her that she does not garner herself. I will kind of be like, yeah, she's so this, she's so that. And it's true, I will start talking about the things I do know, instead of just saying, nah, I'm not really into her. I haven't really... Sometimes that bothers me. when I don't stand up for who I really am in the moment. And I've always thought in the past that maybe that's just something you should do at work, but I think you need to be real about who you are. Because when it comes out later that you don't know anything about Taylor Swift, it's kind of like, okay, why were you talking about that, And also, I don't want someone to be like, invite me to Taylor Swift or something. And I'm like, actually, I don't like her, so I'm not going to pay to go. And then it creates a confusing social situation. You need to be honest about who you are. And being honest about who you are is not a bad thing. Saying there's things that you don't know or don't like is fine. But that's the one thing about this that bothers me. It doesn't bother me that sometimes it bothers me that I emulate people's accents, because if someone did that to me, I'm British, I might feel a little bit offended in the moment, like, are you making fun of me, right? But really, it's the times where I just kind of become a mind meld with the group to, I don't even know why I do it. I don't even think it's to fit in. Maybe it is. I don't know. I mean, a social chameleon. But to be honest, I can fit into almost any group you plot me in. Any social group. When you watch Mean Girls, and there's that whole scene where they go, these are like the goths. I think there's like a hot black people. There's the nerds. There's, all these silly little groups, And I can almost fit in with any group. Just start kind of emulating who they are. And I know so much about so much because of my ADHD and how I've gone down so many rabbit holes of so many things. My popular culture knowledge is insane. So I can almost immediately be like, oh yeah, I know all of that about Marilyn Manson and goth culture or whatever. And oh yeah, rappers and, Tupac and yeah, absolutely. And Britney Spears, oh yeah, I can tell you everything about her. I can tell you everything about this era of movies. This, life-changing thing that happened on VH1 in 1996. Like, it's insane how much stuff, you heard what I was going to say, how much stuff I know that helps me to just kind of blend in. And I wish I didn't do that so much all the time. Alright, the second one. May be highly self-educated, but will have struggled with social aspects of college or their career. Yes, 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 and yes. So you heard me just say I'm super highly self-educated. I read all the time, look up things. If I find out one little thing, it's a deep dive into the wiki, deep dive into every link in that wiki, go to Google the situation, have to read every article about it. And I'm educated. I don't know. I mean, they mention college and stuff too, but they say self-educated. I wouldn't say I was self-educated through college, but I have a bachelor's degree. I have a graduate certificate, and I'm currently in a master's program. And I may or may not get a PhD or, I forget what it's called, Doctorate of Education, which is not a PhD. But I remember going to college, and it was horrific, honestly. I grew up in London, which is a huge city, but it's hard to describe. When you see in movies and TV how someone lives in New York, but they know everyone in their neighborhood. So they've lived there for decades. Their mom lived there. Their grandmother lived there. Everyone they know ever has lived there. So they go to their local bodega, and they know the guy who knew their mom, who knew their grandma, and their grandparents knew each other. And they go to, this store, and they're like, hey, guy I see every day for the last 35 years. Like, that's kind of how it is in big cities. You can still be very connected. And so I went to a very small elementary school. And then from that elementary school fed into a high school where a lot of people from that elementary school went. My high school was very small. We had, I believe, 80 kids in my graduating class, or 180 kids. I can't remember now. Either way, that's quite small. Everyone knew each other. Everyone, my friend in high school, her dad was taught by one of the teachers who was at that school. So it's just this continuation of generations. And I really benefited from that because I knew everyone as I was going through school. I moved into small schools, like a small high school, where, people were connected and knew each other, and I knew people going there. When I went to college, I went to a completely different city, which I somewhat regret now. I kind of wish I'd stayed in London. I went to a completely different city, didn't know anybody, no one I knew went to that college, and it was so difficult to deal with. I felt like I was a fish that someone had just taken out of my goldfish bowl with my 5 friends I'd lived with for, however long goldfish live, and they'd throw me into the ocean. It was absolutely traumatizing, and I didn't realize it at the time that I was struggling with that. I knew I was struggling, but I didn't know that I was struggling particularly with the fact that I had to be social with people I'd never met before. So you moved into, I picked a more expensive dorm or whatever. In the US, you always share a room. Thank God in the UK. I don't know about the rest of Europe, but I think it's true. You don't share a room with anybody. There was one guy I knew who shared a room, and that was like the shitty room that if you had nowhere else to live, you got to live in like one of 2 shared rooms on campus. But you could live in a dorm, it wasn't a dorm, it was like houses. So it was like all these houses next to each other, like apartments just built into the hill by the college for miles. And you could live with 14 people, and it was like $20 to $30 cheaper a week rent if you lived with 14 people. And I decided to pay the $20 to $30 more to live with, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 other people. So I think it was 5 total with me. And you also got a washer dryer in the little apartment that the people with 14 didn't get. They had to go to a laundromat. It was still so horrifically difficult to communicate with these people. Being in a new space with people I didn't know, just walking outside. Does anyone else have this? And it's actually subsided as I've gotten older, where you're just walking and you feel so exposed and like everyone's looking at you, and that you have to kind of, it's like, do you look at them? Do you not look at them? When you pass people walking, do you say hi? Do you just look away? Do you look down? I really struggle with that. And I just honestly don't know how I got through it. I remember having to work with my first group in the first year of college, which wasn't the people that I lived with, and having to go to their different apartments it was awful. And it affected my schoolwork because I didn't know how to really communicate so much with people I didn't know so frequently. And it just wasn't something that I enjoyed. Same at work, but I've grown up, or I've made choices that I realize seemed unconscious, maybe weren't, to choose jobs that had a small amount of people working there. So I've mostly worked for small businesses and nonprofits, which tend to have a smaller staff. And most recently, I have been working for a global corporation where there's hundreds of people in the building. And that has been a real struggle for me, to be honest. To walk in, I don't know everyone. I'm walking by desks of people I've never seen, never talked to. Who do I talk to? How do I ingratiate myself to them? Who do I say hello to? It's been a struggle. So yeah, totally relate to that. Third one, can be very shy or mute, yet can become very outspoken when discussing a subject they're passionate about. Yes, I am always seen to be shy, very shy, reserved, stoic, until when it says discussing a subject they're passionate about. Yeah, but usually it's more like when you get to know me. So if you get to know me and I feel comfortable around you, I will all of a sudden become the total opposite. You'll be like, wow, she's quite shy and demure, and she doesn't really speak much, and she's, keeping it all in. Then once I get to know you, I'm like, blah, 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 blah. I don't know if it's ADHD, but I will talk forever about everything, loudly, quickly, excitedly, and it does surprise people. Always has. It's always been a thing, and I used to think it was just because I was shy, kind of an only child. But, when my mom got a boyfriend one time, I remember the first time when I started kind of talking out loud a lot, and he was like, oh, she's like talking, what? And my mom said, yeah, once she gets to know you, that's what she does. And so, yeah, absolutely relate to that. The fourth one, struggles to know when to speak in large groups or at parties. Yes and no. I mean, it says struggles to know when to speak. I think more like I speak, and then when I see people's reactions, I realize, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or I cut someone off. It's especially true when I'm on the phone. I've learned to, leave hugely pregnant pauses because I don't allow for that back and forth, I guess. I can't see the person's body language, so I'll just cut people off. I'll be like, and they're talking. But in large groups or at parties, this might just be a lack of self-awareness, and maybe if I asked my husband, he'd be like, yeah, dude, you come off kind of funny when you're talking in groups where people don't know you that well. Because to me, I seem like I'm the life of the party. I don't know. Get a drink in me and my ADHD's flowing and stuff, I think I'm fun and frisky and all that. But yeah, maybe when I'm speaking, maybe that's a lack of self-awareness there. But yeah, hate thinking about some of these because it brings up a lot of stuff where you're like, oh god, I remember that one time I said that one thing and it was awful. Blech. Alright, 1, 2, 3, 4. Fifth one. Does not initiate conversations, but can appear outgoing and comfortable when approached. Yes. This is kind of, I'm like, am I reading that right? I don't even see here. Here's my neurodivergency coming out here. I don't even know how that relates. Does not initiate conversations, but can appear outgoing and comfortable when approached. So then the assumption is if you do not initiate conversations, you are not outgoing and comfortable. Is that what it's saying? Okay. Does not initiate conversations. I think that's probably true of the past, when I would kind of talk a lot about myself. And I've spoken about this prior. I got trained when I was in sales in my early 20s how to talk to people, how to conversate. So they taught me to ask questions about them. I don't know if anyone here's done online dating, but when you're just I've done Bumble, where you're trying to find a friend, for God's sakes, and you're just going, hey, so, where did you grow up, and what do you enjoy? And they're like, I grew up in Philly, I enjoy cake. Okay. What's your favorite cake? My favorite cake is carrot cake. Okay, have you ever made carrot cake? Yes, I have. So that, exchange I just demonstrated, that person is not conversating very well. They're not asking me questions, they're just leaving me to keep going, and I think a lot of people don't realize that they do that. And so I was trained in sales on how to initiate and keep a conversation going, and thank God I learned it in my early 20s through sales, because I don't know where I would be now. But, I do appear outgoing and comfortable when approached. Is that a masking thing? I don't know. It doesn't really say here, so I'm not sure. But if you approach me, I'm not like, oh my god, you approached me. I mean, maybe. If you touch me on the shoulder, I might be like, I just say that a lot. You scared the life out of me, because it happens all the time. In the office especially. But I do appear outgoing and comfortable when approached, and do initiate conversations, but again, that was a learned behavior from in my early 20s. Alright, the next one is, can socialize, but primarily in shallow, superficial ways that may seem like a performance. Okay, I feel insulted, and maybe it's because I feel like it's true. I don't know. In a shallow, superficial way. This is something I've struggled with my husband, because I honestly don't really know what a deep way of socializing is. This could be totally left field here, but in the past, currently, always, and forever, I've related better with men. And there is that generalization that women socialize and connect by, doing and communicating. I forget what they call it, facing each other and talking to each other. whereas men connect side by side, like parallel, so maybe like watching a movie, playing a video game. That's how I connect. I connect by being parallel with somebody and joking with them, and but that doesn't seem shallow and superficial to me. So that's annoying. And then it says that may seem like a performance. I don't even get what that means. Because I often see people that I think they're performing socially, and it makes me uncomfortable. Kind of the people who need a lot of attention, which could be some people with ADHD. Not that they need attention, but they're just so out there all the time. Putting themselves out there. God, I don't know about that one. If that resonates with you, get in contact with me, because I don't even understand that one. Alright, the penultimate one. Struggles to form deeper friendships. Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, this kind of goes with the last one. Friendships often fall off for me. People stop messaging me, I message them, we kind of go back and forth. Is it because I was never able to form a deeper friendship with them? I'm not sure that's true. I think I formed lots of deep friendships with people, but I've done it in a slower way than people might expect or accept, and I've done it in ways that are authentic to me, talking about things that are true to me. I mean, I will, if I know that you are safe, I will tell you about my dad who was an addict who died when I was 4. I will tell you about the abuse I've been through. I'll tell you about being poor. I'll tell you about having troubles with my husband. I'll tell you about my insecurities. But maybe I need to trust you first, I don't know. I would say yes, but I feel called out on that one. And the final one is, has trouble disappointing or disagreeing with someone during a real-time conversation. That's actually true, and it's something that I've always been like, why do I do that? Where someone will ask me, did you do that? And I'll say, yeah. And then immediately go, no, I didn't do that. Why did I tell him I did it? Because I don't need to have done it right then. I could just say, no, I'm going to do it right now. But I get so worked up about, I don't know if it's to do with my auditory processing that's low, that I just kind of throw out there like, yeah, sure, whatever. I don't like disappointing people. I've learned, especially through work, that if you're going to disagree with someone, you have to offer something up. So you can't say to someone, I disagree with you on that, and just let it lie. So if someone says, I think we should do this at work, or in your home life probably, you can't just say, I don't think we should. You have to say, I don't think we should because da-da-da-da, and I think we should do da-da-da-da. That's a social tip from me to you. You can't just call someone out and say they're wrong with no solutions and no reasons. It's something I've learned over the year from work. Thankfully, work has trained me to be social in so many ways. But, yeah, I hate to disappoint people. My husband would say I love to disagree with people. But the thing is, parents out there, especially moms, you're gonna know this. Moms tend to see, man, how do I say this? Kids tend to show their moms everything. As in, I've seen it a lot that they'll be kind of nice to their dad, and then they'll just throw a fit around their mom. That's because they feel really safe with their mom. Not to say it doesn't happen with the dads too, especially if you're a single dad, you're a stay-at-home dad, or you're more present in your kids' lives than maybe your mom is. Maybe she's working more. But I've seen that where kids really show who they really are to the people that they trust, and I feel that with my husband. That my disagreeing with him, I may not necessarily do with other people because I don't trust them and don't feel safe with them. And he sees it as like a bit of an affront, like, why do you say no to everything or disagree with? And I'm like, because I trust you to receive my true thoughts and feelings. So that's a yes, yes, and yes. And that is the final autistic female trait of all the traits. And if I go back, I think I probably said yes in some way or another to all of these traits, which I wish I'd had this list about, at any time in my life, but in the last 5 to 10 years. I was diagnosed 3 years ago and loved my WebMD and my Googling my little, if you do this test, you'll find out if you have this or you're likely to have that, because, man, I'm like, yes to all this stuff. It doesn't feel bad, though. It doesn't feel bad to say yes to this stuff. It feels bad that I didn't know it earlier, but knowing this stuff now just means that you know more about yourself, and you can express more of yourself to the people you love. Maybe have people you live with or love read this list, and then they might understand you a bit better. So I hope that has helped you in some way. This is the 4th and final episode of the Female Autistic Traits Outline from the Unmasking Autism book by Dr. Devon Price. And again, if you're loving what you're listening to, please leave a review, follow me on social media, and I will see you again next week for a brand new episode on My Brain is a Wonderland Season 2.